Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I know I can stand secure. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I put my hope in your holy word. I put my hope in your holy word. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I know I can stand secure. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I put my hope in your holy word. I put my hope in your holy word. I have a living hope. I have a future. God has a plan for me. Of this I'm sure. Of this I'm sure. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I know I can stand secure. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I put my hope in your holy word. I put my hope in your holy word. Your word is faithful. Mighty with power. God will deliver me. Of this I'm sure. Of this I'm sure. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I know I can stand secure. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I put my hope in your holy word. I put my hope in your holy word. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I know I can stand secure. Jesus, you're my firm foundation. I put my hope in your holy word. 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 All right, you may be seated.
Good morning. Welcome to Crossway Church. Man, what a great day. Sun is shining. It's not as cold as it was. It wasn't cold. It's not cold now as it was this morning about 6 o'clock. So we get to all kind of take our jackets off and experience a good, nice day. I want to start today off, maybe for you guys, with a little bit of humor, a little bit of fun. I got two jokes for you. So the first one is, why did math books have such a big issue with the pandemic? Why did math books have such big issues with the pandemic? Yeah, why? Because they had so many problems. Clearly, some of you guys didn't open math books, but there's problems in math books, okay? The second one, maybe this one will be a little bit more funny, and you guys will get this one a little bit better. Why do couples not go to the gym together? Why do some couples not go to the gym together? Anybody got, what'd you say? Okay, just why? Because they don't work out. Haha. Super funny, right? I know they're not super good. I'm not the most humorous and funny guy, but I thought those were kind of funny. I thought especially the gym one was funny. I like exercise and working out. And speaking of working out and just couples and life in general, I just want you guys to know that we're so glad you're here. There's so many, my relationship with my wife and my life has been changed because of church and because of God. And, I get to do things like I enjoy working out. I got to work out with the guy yesterday morning and enjoy time with him and a good friendship that I wouldn't have had without God. And I'm just so grateful for the relationship that I have. But I just wanted to open the day up with some humor, maybe some lightheartedness, because the sun is great. Today's going to be great. The sermon's going to be awesome. And we're so glad you guys are here if you're visiting with us today. And if you're not visiting and you're a member here, we're so glad you're here because, man, I love the friendships I have, the relationships I have with all of you guys. And I'm just so grateful for you and the parts of my life that you play, the roles in my life that you play. And so I just want to say thank you for being here. Glad you guys are visiting. Hope you guys have more fun. than my non-funny jokes. So I'm going to say a prayer and then give you some further instructions. Father God, as we come to you, God, as I mentioned, today is such a glorious day. It's awesome to just get to experience the sun shining on our faces, a good weather, good relationships, good conversations, God, and your word. A good time this morning to be able to hear your word and how it can apply to our lives in a way where we can just really get to experience the blessings you want to provide for us, the promises you have for us, and really the goodness and fullness of life that you have planned for us. Father, thank you for all of it. Thank you for the opportunity for us to be able to just be here, get to hear you, get to hear the love that you want to have for us and that you do have for us, God, what you want to show us. Father, I pray that everybody here this morning has a great time, gets to experience a fun time, it's enjoyable, God, and sometimes, God, the things we need to hear are the most enjoyable. So, God, I just pray that we leave here this morning after hearing your word, and we leave here with hearts that are full. We leave here with minds that are moving into action, and how we can apply it to our lives so we can experience something so great, and that's a relationship with you. Father, thank you for everything. Thank you for Jesus, and in his name I pray. Amen. All righty, I want you guys to stand up, say hi to somebody around you, meet some new friends, and hopefully they'll be more fun than those jokes.
Set my feet upon Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. When you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. In this life I lose, I will follow. When you go, I'll go. When you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. When you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. In this life I lose, I will follow. All your ways are good, all your ways are sure. I will trust in you alone, higher than my sight, high above my life. I will trust in you alone, in you alone. When you go, I'll go. When you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. In this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah. Light into the world, light into my life. I will live for you alone. You're the one I see, knowing I will find all I need in you alone, in you alone. When you go, I'll go. When you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. In this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah. In you there's life everlasting. In you there's freedom for my soul. In you there's joy unending. Joy. When you go, I'll go. When you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. In this life I lose, I will follow. When you go, I'll go. When you stay, I'll stay. When you move, I'll move. I will follow you. Whom you love, I'll love. How you serve, I'll serve. In this life I lose, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Yeah, I will follow you. Be seated.
Please bow and pray with me. Dear God, I just want to just thank you for today. Thank you for just a beautiful morning. Started out pretty cold, but it's such a beautiful day, and I just am so grateful to be here this morning. I pray as we continue this morning, as we sing these next few songs, that we just remember your greatness, remember that you show up for us every single day, that you never turn your back away from us, and that we can always rely on you and your people. I pray for anybody that's here today, just searching for that, searching for you, searching for a group of people that, will have their back, will be with them, through thick and thin. I just pray that they can know that they have found it here with us, and I know that because I found it here with all these great and wonderful people that have been changed by you. And so ultimately, all the glory goes to you, and I just thank you so much for all you've done in my life and the lives of others. And in Jesus' name, amen.
What to say, Lord? Oh, sorry. I forgot I had you guys sit down. Please stay with us. What to say, Lord? It's you gave me life and I can't explain just how much you mean to me now that you save me, Lord. I give all that I am to you every day. I can be a light that shines your name. Every day, Lord, I'll learn to stand upon your word and pray that I might come to know you more than you would guide me. In every single step I take that every day I can be a light unto the world every day. It's you I live for every day. I'll follow after you every day. I'll walk with you, my Lord. Whoa. Every day, Lord, I'll learn to stand upon your word and pray that I might come to know you more, to guide me in every single step I take that every day. I can be a light unto the world every day. It's you I live for every day. I'll follow after you every day. I'll walk with you, my Lord. Whoa. Every day, it's you I live for every day. I'll follow after you every day. I'll walk with you, my Lord. Whoa. It's you I live for every day. It's you I live for every day. It's you I live for every day. Whoa. It's you I live for every day. It's you I live for every day. It's you I live for every day. Whoa. Every day, it's you I live for every day. I follow after you every day. I walk with you, my Lord. Whoa. Every day, it's you I live for every day. I follow after you every day. I walk with you. It's you I live for every day. All right, please.
Good morning, Crossway. Man, it is so good to be together. I'm excited this morning for the topic of the morning. I'm excited to dive into God's Word with you guys about a very important topic, in fact. Before we dive in, though, let me welcome everybody again. If you're visiting with us, we want you to know, man, you are our honored guest, and we're so glad that you're here. And those aren't just words. I pray that you guys will see something different in this family of believers. I pray that you see a group that you could connect with in a real and meaningful way. I pray that you can see a group that's not intimidating or, stuffy or standoffish. And I pray that you don't see a preacher this morning that just has a bunch of fancy words and funny stories. But I pray so much that you guys will see Jesus this morning and that you'll hear very clearly from God's Spirit as He speaks to each and every one of you this morning. See, I'm not good enough to figure out how to speak to all of y'all, but He is that good. And so listen, tune in to what God specifically wants to say to you guys this morning. Don't think so much about your neighbor and what they're hearing, but think about what you can hear God say to you. Before we dive in too much, anytime somebody surrenders their life to the Lord, I actually left her gift up here, so let me go up here and get it. But we like to recognize folks when someone surrenders their life to Jesus. And so Hillary Newman, come on up. She was baptized into Christ just a couple of days ago, and so we're very excited to welcome her to the family. She loves this attention right now. So she's practiced a curtsy, I think, didn't you? Or a wave. There you go. That's her princess wave. Listen, Hillary, we love you very much. My wife raves about you, and so I can't wait to see what God is going to do in your life. We love you very much. Welcome to the family. Yep. And by the way, who studied with her? It was my wife and who else? And Ashlyn. Where's Ashlyn? She's teaching? Okay. Oh, okay. Anyway, she's not here. But anyway, something to celebrate about. I know the angels before God are seeing God sing and rejoice over that decision that Hillary made. And I'm just excited to see what God is going to do through her. When you came in this morning, you got a worship bulletin. So go ahead and pull out that set of notes. You'll see some blanks on there that you can follow along. Go ahead and pull that out. Let me hear them. All right, y'all got them? Good. You got your pens ready? All right, there we go. So let's take some good notes this morning because I think God has some very important things to say to all of us. All right? And I think it's very timely as we think about the culture we find ourselves in, as we think about even the religious culture that swirls around our nation. There's so many churches on every corner gathered this morning and really all over the nation. And I really think that the message this morning is an important one for all of us to really tune into. I want you to imagine this. Imagine Crossway, this church. We've been in this is our third new location, okay, and this is our newest place. We've only been here 3 weeks. It's not ideal the way that it looks currently, but it is a blessing. And we're hoping that this will be our long-term place, and we're hoping to reconfigure it, take some of this stuff out, and expand the seating and those kind of things so we can fit more people in here and see God do amazing things. You know, maybe even do away with this pretty red carpet and put some. But anyway, the building is not the church, right? The church is the people of God. And so you can put us in a cave. You could put us in a building like this. You can put us in a hotel. You can put us in a boys and girls club. And the church isn't impacted. The church is the church. And so we're looking forward to what God is going to do. But I want you to imagine this. Crossway started with 24 people. 24 of us moved out here to Columbia to plant this church. Our biggest Sunday so far, and we did that, by the way, we started in basically January 2021. We started meeting at the Stony Creek Hotel and Conference Center. And since that day, our biggest Sunday has been 102 or 103. I can't remember, one of those numbers. So we've grown. And we've had over 70 baptisms. People commit their lives to Christ, which is awesome. And so, but I want you to imagine this church grows even more, like we double by the end of this year. And then by the next year, maybe 2 years from now, we're growing exponentially so. And let's say God does some awesome stuff and we had 5,000. I want you to imagine 5,000 church members. Can y'all imagine it real quick? We wouldn't fit up in here, okay? But imagine 5,000 church members. Imagine a senior minister, the preacher, is far more talented than me. I want you to picture someone who is, he's eloquent, he's funny, he's dynamic, he dances and sings well, he does it all, man. It's everybody loves him. He's deep. He's able to instruct. He's top-notch preacher. Imagine the worship team is getting calls from Nashville. Record deals, I don't know. What I want you to imagine is a vibrant church, okay? A vibrant church of 5,000. Now you tell me, if the senior minister, as good as he is, stood up one Sunday morning and with one message made enough people upset that the next Sunday they got together. This is what I want you to imagine. 5,000 one Sunday. This preacher gets up, ticks everybody off with his message. And the next Sunday, they go down to they lose 988 people in one Sunday. They're left with the preacher, and they're left with 12 people that didn't get too ticked off. Now, I want you to answer this question. What do you think should happen to that preacher? He lost 4,982 members in one message. What do you think would happen to such a guy? He would be, fired in a New York minute, right? Fired quickly. But what if I flipped the story and told you that there actually was a church that did this? That the preacher stood up and he gave a message and literally shrunk the church from 5,000 to just 13, including himself. Do you know the name of the church? It was the Church of Christ. Him and his 12 followers were all that were left after the message that he delivered that I'm going to be going through this morning. And you know what worries me about this? That it might not tick y'all off the way that it ticked Jesus' audience off. That's what worries me. It worries me when we have messages that are so soft and so watered down that essentially they're not saying anything other than being a little crafty, a little creative, a little funny, and making everybody feel good as they leave the doors. But here's the thing. That wasn't the type of preacher Jesus was. And there's this false Jesus that's floating around all over religious culture today, and people have bought into this soft, rocking a lamb to sleep Jesus, when Jesus has some things that he wants to say very directly to all of us. And it might not sit so well with some of us. So, today we're going to talk about this story. It's not all on your notes, but some of it is on your notes, but all of it will be on the screen. Read along with me if you will. We're going to start in John chapter 6, and we're going to start in verse 25. That part is not on your notes. It'll eventually be on your notes around about verse 29. So it says, when they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, Rabbi, when did you get here? Now, real quick, before we keep reading, I want to give you some context. It says, when they found him on the other side of the lake, where he was before was on the same side of the lake as this big crowd. And we know the size of the crowd. If you read just a little bit before this in chapter 6, this is where Jesus feeds 5,000 men. And probably at least that many women. And who knows how many children in addition to that. But the text says there were 5,000 men gathered. And he feeds all of them with one little boy's lunch. It's a miraculous sign. He takes this little boy's lunch, just a couple of loaves and some fish, and he thanks God for it. And then he has his apostles distribute it as much as anybody wanted. And at the end of it all, they were all satisfied, had enough to eat, their bellies were full, and they filled up 12 baskets. That's what just happened. And so now Jesus has snuck off with his disciples to the other side of the lake. And now this big 5,000 member men mob is looking for him. And they want to follow him. So it says that when they find him, he says, when did you get here? Jesus answered, very truly, I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw the miraculous signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves, right, the loaves of bread, and had your fill. In other words, you got a free lunch. Then Jesus turned to them and says, don't work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. Now, Son of Man is an Old Testament reference to God, to the Messiah, that was to come. And so Jesus is talking about himself and declaring himself by saying the phrase Son of Man. He's declaring himself to be God here. And he says, for on him, God the Father has placed his seal of approval on God the Son. Then they asked him, what must we do to do the works that God requires? And Jesus answered. Now, y'all need to maybe jot this down, but it says, the work of God is this. Are y'all ready? Now, this will mess up some people's theology. The work of God is this, to believe in the one he sent. Now, I thought belief and work were not really interchangeable ideas, but here Jesus defines the work of God that is required of us is to believe in the one he sent. Now, this is where your notes pick up, but it says, very truly, I tell you, Jesus says, the one who believes has eternal life. I'm the bread of life. Your ancestors ate manna in the wilderness. Now, manna was this stuff that God provided from heaven, and it floated down. It looked like little wafers from heaven. They called it manna. Manna in Hebrew sounds like, what is it? Like the phrase, what is it? But he says, they ate bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread, though, as Jesus is talking about himself being the living bread, he says, whoever eats this bread will live forever. This bread is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. Then the Jews began to argue sharply among themselves. How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. And this is about to get weird. Jesus says, whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up at the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so the one who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. Your ancestors ate manna and died, but whoever feeds on this bread will live forever. He said this while teaching in the synagogue in Capernaum. Now that's it. That's a long reading, but I thank you guys for bearing with me as I went through that. But guys, this is a weird message. Now I don't know if y'all grew up going to church or not, but I didn't. And if I had walked up into a church setting that's already uncomfortable because I don't know what to expect, I walked up in there and the preacher started talking about eat me, would that be a little weird? And a lot of these guys, it doesn't matter. And look, it doesn't matter that he just fed them with a little boy's lunch miraculously. They are not impressed. This is weird. This is off-putting. And the disciples, guys, you're going to see this as we keep digging into further verses as we go through this sermon. But you're going to see them kind of going, what is he saying? These people are going to think he's nuts, right? Like that's not recorded exactly, but you're going to see that sort of mindset and attitude from the disciples because they think this is wild too. And yet Jesus said it. So what I want to do this morning, if you look at your notes, and you can start filling these in, but I want to show you guys what it means and what it looks like to trust Jesus when his teachings are hard. Now, there are a lot of things that can make a teaching hard. It could be hard to understand. It could be hard to stomach. It could be hard to hear because maybe it makes me feel guilty or whatever it is. But when his teachings are hard, I want to show you what you can do to make sure that you can trust him in that time. So fill in the first one. The first thing I can do to trust Jesus when his teachings are hard is I must admit some of Jesus' teachings are hard. Specifically, they're hard for me, okay? Now, this might seem very, very simple, but you need to understand this. So some of Jesus' teachings, if you can't admit that they're hard, you just think they're all piece of cake, then I don't think you have really heard enough of Jesus because let me illustrate it this way. So How many of y'all think it's easy? My new friend here, I don't want to call you out too much, but you're just right there in eye shot. But my new friend here, he's from Alabama, so I know he's strong. That's the way we're made in Alabama, all right? Okay, so my new friend here, he comes up and just slaps me on my cheek, boy. Just pops me. Are you going to tell me that Jesus' teaching of if someone strikes you on one cheek, what you're supposed to do is turn to him the other and let him go at you again? Is that an easy teaching or is that a hard one? So, is that an easy one or is that a hard one? Now, if I reverse the roles, would that be easy? No, he wouldn't like that at all. Nobody would. And yet, this is what Jesus said. Jesus said, this is the expectation, that if you're going to listen to me, you're going to listen to me. It's going to be my way. So now my dad used to tell me, if someone starts the fight with you, then you don't start it, but you finish it, right? But Jesus says something very different. If someone strikes you on one side, you give them your other side. Very different than the way I was raised. Anybody else raised different than that? Yeah. So, so he's doing the best he can this morning, guys. So in case you're wondering, they're trying to help him, process and do some things. He's got some autism, and so anyway, just be mindful. Okay, I don't want to cause a scene, but just so you're aware that we know what's going on. Okay. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to confess this to Jesus. So you can write that down. When we're in a time where we're having to admit that, yes, some of Jesus' teachings are hard, we need to confess it to Jesus. And I would argue that not only do you need to confess it to Jesus, you need to let other disciples know. Other disciples that are following Jesus know. Let me illustrate it this way. If you hear a teaching this morning that's hard for you, and you go, man, Jesus says if someone steals from me, I got to give him something else. If someone asks me to walk 1 mile, I don't just walk 1 mile, I got to walk 2. If you hear some teaching of Jesus that doesn't sit right with you, or maybe Jesus calls something a sin that your culture says is completely okay, and maybe even you have a family member who thinks it's okay and is living that way, but Jesus says something different than that, then that might not sit well with you. And so in those times, don't pretend like it's not an issue. Admit it and say, this is hard for me. Talk to other disciples about it. Confess that, hey, Jesus, I hear what you're saying. I can read it. I see it. And I'm still struggling with accepting it. Own that. Do you know Jesus never turned away somebody that openly told him that they were struggling with believing? Every time that someone shared their doubts, admitted their doubts, and brought it to the forefront to Jesus, Jesus didn't scoff at them, but he stepped closer to them to help them get through that doubt and even overcome it. So guys, we're a church that wants you to openly go, I don't get that. That doesn't make sense. I don't even believe that. Cool. You're in the right place. Let's talk about it. Not in an aggressive, you better conform, but let's talk through it and let's see what Jesus has to say on these issues. Look at John chapter 6, verse 60. This is right after Jesus said that big long message of eat my flesh, drink my blood. In the synagogue, he says all this. And then it says, many of his disciples said, this is a hard teaching. Circle hard teaching on your notes. His disciples confessed it to him. They said, Jesus, this is hard. And then they asked, who can accept this? But Jesus doesn't walk away from them. He steps closer and he continues the conversation. Now, the disciples here described the teachings of Jesus as hard, right? I told you to circle that. This word is not our Bibles were not originally written in English. They were written, the Old Testament in Hebrew and the New Testament in Greek. Well, the Greek word that is used here to describe hard is the word scleros. And it's where we get our word sclerosis, like multiple sclerosis, the disease. Have y'all ever heard of someone having hardened arteries? Have y'all heard of that before? Like someone having hardened arteries? So that's a condition with the word sclerosis on the end. It's arthrosclerosis, which is hard to say. But it literally means to harden and to render dysfunctional so that it can no longer function the way it was designed. And so Jesus' followers are literally saying, Jesus, this is scleros. This is hard. And it's going to shut me down if I don't figure this thing out. It's going to render me ineffective. And guys, let me tell you, that's why it's so important that you don't listen to a preacher. It doesn't matter if it's me or anybody else claiming that God's word says something or pointing you at God's word and showing you what it says. It doesn't matter who it is. If you hear something and you just bottle it up and pretend like it didn't really bother you or that you don't really agree and you don't admit it, it will harden, not your arteries, but your heart. Not the thing that pumps blood in your chest, but your heart of hearts. It'll harden your mind. It'll turn you away and ultimately keep you from being able to see and hear what God wants you to hear. Fill in this next blank. The other thing you can do, which would be the opposite, confessing it would be good. But the bad thing you could do would be you can complain about it to others. You hear some teaching that is hard from Jesus, and instead of going to Jesus or going to a responsible disciple that could help you through it, you go to others and you complain about it. Can you believe what they said? Can you believe that Jesus said that? The Bible is a hate book. Right? And they complain about Jesus or complain about the preacher or complain about the church or complain about the Bible even. There are places that want the Bible scrapped as hate speech. That's already a thing in our culture. And so there are people that will complain rather than bringing it up and confessing that there is a difficulty that we have. Look at John chapter 6. You see this. In John 6:61, as we keep walking through this story, and continue the conversation that the disciples are having with Jesus. It says, aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus said to them, does this offend you? Now, what if Jesus asked you that question? Like he just told you something, and then he goes, did that offend you? And, you know, there's a quote that stands out to me every time I hear the word offended, but it's being inoffensive and being offended are the twin addictions of our culture. You're either the guy that goes, I'm offended. I'm offended. How dare you? Canceled. That's either who you are, right? Large part of our culture. That's why we have safe spaces on your college campuses. Because I want to go there so that no one could disagree with me, because that makes me offended. We can't have conversations. We can't admit that we have a disagreement and do it politely and lovingly and kindly, but we just have to cancel everybody that sees things different than us instead of coming closer and addressing our differences. We can complain. In Matthew 11, verse 6, it says, and blessed is the one who is not offended by me. Now, here's the thing, guys. If you're offended by something Jesus says, it's only bad if you run away from Jesus and distance yourself and cancel him. It's not bad if you go, Jesus, this is a hard teaching. How can anybody accept it? And you keep the conversation with him going. Then it's a good thing. And he can get you to a point where you're no longer offended, but you realize that he was right and you were seeing it incorrectly. And by the way, guys, why does Jesus get to be the the decision maker on what is good and what is not good. It comes down to one thing. It's not because I was raised in the church here in America, and therefore the church that I was connected with was a Christian one. If I was in India, maybe I'd have been a Hindu. Or if I was, excuse me, it's not determined. Maybe if I was in Saudi Arabia, I'd have been a Muslim. That is not, I'm not a Christian this morning because it's the dominant religion in America. I'm a Christian this morning who says I follow Jesus because Jesus died and 3 days later came back from the dead. On the other hand, Muhammad, who wrote the Quran, is still dead. And it really does boil down. Buddha is still dead. See, Jesus is made ultimately credible above all other gurus in the world because he said, I'm going to be killed, and 3 days later, I'm going to come out of the grave. And then you'll know that I'm the one you need to listen to. And that's ultimately where it is. And so blessed is the one who's not offended by Jesus' teachings. In other words, the one that stepped forward when they were and worked it out. And ultimately said, you know what? I'm going to trust the one who rose from the dead more than I trust my gut or my feeling or my culture or my family member that I love dearly that sees things so differently. So blessed is the one that isn't offended by Jesus. Fill in number 2. So to trust Jesus when his teachings are hard, the second thing I need to do is anticipate Jesus not relaxing his standard. Have you ever seen a parent in the grocery store that frustrated you when their kid was acting the fool? Anybody else ever been frustrated like that? I don't know, listen, I'm not here this morning to give just parenting advice, but if I could just for a second. Some of the things that I see, I want so badly to go over and help that mother whose baby boy is giving her a fit in that moment and needs a dad's voice. This was happening, I'm going to call out one of the boys in this congregation that I love dearly and his dad who I love dearly. But Fernando and Caitlin, we were at Hoo Hot. Y'all like Hoo Hot? Y'all know what Hoo Hot is here in town? It's like this Mongolian sort of buffet place where you go up and you get the raw meat and you take it up there and they cook it right on the big thing in front of you and then you take it to your table. Anyway, more than you need to know. But we're at Hoo Hot. And they left the boy, David, in his high chair. And they were both away from the table. And I was at this end of a long table. He was way down over there. And boy was throwing a fit. And I'll never forget this because I was trying to talk and I was literally ignoring. I was hearing it, but it was just background noise. But then it just kept going and it kept escalating. And so I turned and I was like, and I think Kayla was standing next to him and she's like, I don't know what to do. Kayla's my daughter, by the way, if you don't know. And so she's over there and I'm like, get it together. Like, fix it. And she's like, to do. And so I go, David, like that with the dad voice, and I'll never forget it, man. He was like, he looked up, he was like in full like, wow, David, he looked. And then he looked at me, he looked around. What's my point? He for a second, he was like, that's a dad voice. Oh, I better hush up. Something about to happen. And then he looked at me and he realized I wasn't making a move in his direction. So then he cried again. Guys, we live in a culture that we see parents cave to the children instead of molding the child the way that he should or she should be molded. So whatever I can do to pacify you, you'll be okay. And this gentle parenting stuff, I'm just going to let you guys know what I feel about it. And this could be one of those moments where you go, I don't like that guy. And that's okay. Because I believe very firmly that one of our problems is we are afraid to say hard things to pretty much anybody for fear that we'll be canceled. even to our kids. We wouldn't say it that way, but we're afraid our kids won't think we're cool, or our kids won't think that we love them. I remember Nathan. Y'all remember those little balls? He wanted those little balls that you would hold in your hand and you would throw out, and it had a rubber band like a bungee attached to it, and you'd wrap the little bracelet around your wrist, and then it connected to the ball. You throw it out, it bounces, the bungee brings it back to your hand. That's the way it looks on the commercial. But you do it, and it takes a fair amount of coordination. Like, I could do it. Pretty coordinated guy. I like all kinds of sports, so that was pretty natural for me. But Nathan was like this tall. And he's like, I want one of those, Dad. Sounded just like that. I want one of those, Dad. I don't know why I sound like that right now, but I said, no, son, you can't have that. No, please, Dad, please. No, you can't have one of those, son. You're too young for that. Even on the box, look here, it says you got to be like 10. I don't know what it said, but it was something like, I made it up. I didn't want to buy it for him. And it was, so, but then he brought out, well, don't you love me? That's a dirty trick, boy. You know what I'm saying? And it was even worse when this one would say stupid stuff like that. It was even worse. So, but I stood my ground. Why? Because I loved him. What would have happened if I bought that ball for him? He'd have thrown that thing out there. It would have bounced and hit him in his nose and busted his nose. That's what would have happened. I'm confident. Because he didn't know how to do anything halfway. He'd throw that thing. You know, he'd have ate it. Every bit of that ball. He'd have ate it. So why did I say no to him? And he cried. He cried the rest of the time. And why did he cry like that? Because his daddy actually loved him and told him something difficult that he didn't want to hear. He gave him a hard teaching. Look at John chapter 6, verse 64, and then also 66 through 67. But some of you don't believe, Jesus said. Jesus knew the people who did not believe. He knew this from the beginning. And he knew the one who would hand him over to his enemies. He knew the betrayer from the beginning, is what it says. After Jesus said these things, many of his followers left and stopped following him. Jesus asked the 12 apostles, do you want to leave too? Circle that question. Jesus heard their complaint. They're like, Jesus, this is a hard teaching. Who can accept it? Jesus steps in, talks with them about it a little more. But then everybody leaves him. The 5,000 member church becomes 12 members and one preacher in one message. And now he looks at the disciples and he doesn't go, here's what we'll do, guys, to get those 5,000 back. I'll formulate a retraction statement. And we'll invite them back and I'll issue a verbal apology, a formal apology to them so that I can try to win them back. Or I'll try to rephrase it. I'll try to say it a little different so that it's more palatable, that people can accept it a little better. Jesus didn't do any of that. He goes, y'all want to leave too? Because my standard, my teaching is not going to change. Guys, the culture can change, and they can say all kinds of things and paint all kinds of pictures of Jesus that are inaccurate. But none of it has any bearing on who he really is and what he really thinks. Can someone say something about you and make it true? No. You can't do that with God either. You can say, I don't like that God. Cool. But you can't change him because you don't like him. He is who he is. And so I choose to discover who he is. And when I find things that I think are hard teachings, I say, hey, that's hard. Help me understand that, Jesus. Hey, disciple that's smarter than me, that's been at this longer than me, help me understand this. And I try to adjust myself. Instead of trying to change God, which is impossible, I try to change my own mind. In John chapter 8, this is not on your notes, but it is on the screen. Check this out. This is Jesus talking. He says, if anyone hears my words but does not keep them, I do not judge that person. Boy, wouldn't we like it if it stopped right there? That's nice. Y'all ever heard somebody say, judge not, lest you be judged? Well, they need to finish that paragraph. They do. Because, boy, if you pluck that sentence out of its context, you got a different thing than what Jesus was talking about. Because Jesus expects us. In that context, what he's saying is, you've got a big old plank sticking out of your eye. It looks like this. You got a big old plank poking out of your eye. But you're trying to pick out the little speck out of this person's eye. When you've got a clear problem, you're the sin police for this little speck in this other person's eye. That's what he's addressing. But do you know what he says after that? He says, judge not lest you be judged. But then he goes on to say, first address the log in your eye so that you can see clearly to remove the speck from your brother or sister's eye. He doesn't say ignore the speck. He says just take care of your own hypocrisy first and then help them. And so we need to read the context here. But here in John 8, he says, if anyone hears these words, I don't judge them. But let's keep reading. For I didn't come to judge the world. Still nice. Still like this. I didn't come to judge the world, but to save the world. There is a judge. Oh, boy. It just took a turn. There is a judge for the one who rejects me and doesn't accept my words. The very words that I have spoken, Jesus said, will condemn them at the last day. For I didn't speak on my own, but the Father who sent me commanded me what to say. I know, Jesus says, that my Father's command leads to eternal life. So whatever I say is just what the Father told me to say. Can you feel the pain in Jesus' voice? Do you think he just liked stirring up the crowd and telling them things that would make them want to go away from him? No, he wanted to hang out with everybody. He wanted to be with everybody. He wanted them to accept his message because his message was truth and his message led to eternal life. But what was happening is because it was an uncomfortable message that people didn't like or thought was too hard to accept, they were walking away from him. But Jesus doesn't say, oh, come back, guys, I'll say it different. He looks at his disciples and said, do you want to leave too? He does not change or relax his standard. Number 3, if you want to trust Jesus when his teachings are hard, you need to ask why the teaching is hard. But you also need to answer that question of yourself honestly. You need to ask yourself, why is what I'm hearing from Jesus right now so hard for me to accept? And then actually be honest about it. 2 parts that we got to do. The first question you can ask is the teaching difficult to understand? That's where you start. Is the reason I'm having a hard time with Jesus' teaching because I just don't understand it? That's the first step. Let's go there. So, in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 16, the Apostle Peter is going to talk about the Apostle Paul in a negative way. Y'all ready? He says, Paul talks about these same things in all his letters, but part of what he says is hard to understand. And if you know what Peter is talking about here, guys, Peter is talking about the Apostle Paul. And if you've ever read any of the Apostle Paul's letters, like 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, right? He wrote the majority, actually, of the New Testament, Romans. If you've ever read Paul, this man, if he was in my English teacher's class, would have had red all over his paper. Run-on sentence. If you read Paul, he's got commas everywhere, and he won't finish a sentence. It just keeps going. We over here, we over here. Paul, up the wall. But that's how Paul wrote, and it can be hard to track. It can be hard to understand. Guys, raise your hand if you can admit that you've read something in the Bible before and tried to read it on your own and you didn't get it. And look, you know what complicates it even more? One of the first Bibles I ever picked up to try to read and understand was a King James Bible. Holy smokes. Like, who just understands Shakespeare automatically? No one. I had to go to class to learn how to read Shakespeare. And so I don't want my Bible. Now, there's nothing wrong with the King James other than that. It's a great translation by and large. But man, if I can have one that I can read without having to translate it first into New English from Old English, that'd be wonderful. And so you'll notice in our sermons we have a number, like this is the Common English version here of 2 Peter. You'll notice there are different versions on your notes. But I carefully select each of these to make sure that I'm not just picking one that says what I want it to say, but I'm picking one that stays true to the original text and communicates the original message in the best possible way to an audience in a way that you can understand it. Is that fair? That takes a lot of time, by the way. But it's worth it to make sure that we're getting it, because sometimes God's word is hard to understand just at face value because Paul uses too many commas or King James speaks weird. The second verse I want to read you is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 18. The Apostle Paul is saying and talking about a group of people. He says they're darkened in their understanding, and they're separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. So there are two reasons why something could be difficult for you. It could be that your heart is so hard that you can't understand. Or it could just be that it's a hard sentence to read and understand. So you need to be honest about that and figure out, is it me? Or is this just something I need somebody to walk me through and help me get it? The second question you need to ask is, do I disagree with this teaching? Kyle, can I get you to, we're in a new place and we're still figuring this thermostat out, but can you bump that up? I feel like people are getting cold, so sorry for all the rest of you with hot flashes right now, okay? Do I disagree with the teaching? You know who is one of the most famous people that disagreed with God's teaching? Jonah. So I thought we'd throw a little Jonah in this morning. From Jonah chapter 4, the first 3 verses, it says, Jonah was very upset about this. See, God had told Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to preach to the Ninevites. And Jonah ran the other way, which is why God had a fish, some kind of sea creature, monster, swallow him. But here's the deal. He spit him out 3 days later in the right direction, where he told him to go to begin with. And so this is the context. And Jonah was very upset about this. He became angry. That's why I tried to run to Tarshish, which is the opposite direction of Nineveh. That's why I went to Tarshish in the first place. I knew that you, God, are a merciful and compassionate God, patient and always ready to forgive. So now, Lord, take my life. Holy smokes, Jonah. Kill me, Jonah says. I'd rather be dead than alive. What was he ticked about? See, the Ninevites, he had a burr in his saddle about the Ninevites. He didn't like the Ninevites. And he didn't want to go preach to them because he knew God would just forgive them. They'd hear the preaching, they'd change, and then God would forgive them. And he didn't think they deserved that. He's like, no, they don't deserve forgiveness. And so he's ticked. I wonder, you say, what does this have to do with me? Well, I wonder, you got anybody in your life you've ever struggled to forgive? That if God said no, you need to forgive them. You need to go and reconcile. You need to let that go. Would you go, you don't understand. You don't know what they've done. And the Ninevites had done some awful things. He had every reason to not like the Ninevites. But God said, nope, go talk to them. Go fix it. Go give them a chance to change. Go give them an opportunity to be forgiven. He didn't like it. And I wonder, guys, if you hear something Jesus says, like, hey, go reconcile with that person that hurt you, might not be easy to hear. And so that brings this lesson close to home, that sometimes the teaching is hard, but you got to take some steps to trust Jesus through the hard. The other question you can ask is, does the teaching disclose a motive problem in my heart or in my mind? In John 6, we see this. In verses 26 through 27, it says, Jesus replied, I tell you the truth, you want to be with me because I fed you. not because you understood the miraculous signs. Don't work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him, the Son of Man, Jesus, God the Father has placed his seal of approval. You see, sometimes what makes Jesus' teaching hard is because it's revealing something about me and about you. And you don't like that. You don't want somebody messing with that or knowing about that. And in those cases, this is what we've got to do. We have to ask the question, am I upset or is this a hard teaching because it's bringing out something bad in me, some motive that's impure, and it's bringing it out to light. But guys, I want to tell you, the only people who don't like those things being brought out into the light are the people that want to stay the way they are. But if you want to change and you want God to make you into the man or woman that you were always intended and created to be, you're going to step happily into the light and go, yep, that's me. I own it. Help me. Bring it into the light. It's why confession is so powerful. But Satan would say, you better not tell nobody. You better not tell nobody. They're going to think something of you, and they'll never think of you or treat you the same way that they do now if they know what we know. Just don't believe the lie, guys. I've been at this a while. I'm 44 years old. I've been in ministry for over 25 years now, I guess. And I've heard about everything. I haven't heard something new in a hot minute. And I'm talking about some things that would make your skin crawl that people have confessed and done and told me. And it just doesn't shock me anymore. And I promise you, if it's not shocking me, it's not shocking God. And it doesn't scare him away. In fact, when you confess, especially when it's something that was deep down inside that no one ever has known, and you bring that to the light, boy, God steps real close, and he meets you there, and he helps you. And that's the kind of church, guys, that we are, and we invite you to be a part of. In Galatians chapter 4, verse 16, it says, have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? You ever done that? You ever had to tell somebody something hard and then they were mad at you because you told them the truth? Yeah. Happens all the time. Happened to Paul. Happened to Jesus. They didn't like what Jesus was saying so much that they were plotting to kill him. And ultimately, they achieved their goal. They did kill him eventually. So all these folks that say, well, if you just act more like Jesus, people would like you. What? No, I think you missed part of the end of the story. They killed him because of the way he taught and the way he spoke and the way that he lived. And so if people are just patting us on the back all the time, I'm not sure we're being exactly like Jesus. I'm not sure we're ever saying enough hard things. I'm not saying go out there and pick fights. But we need to be able to say hard things to people in a loving way. If you saw somebody playing in traffic, you wouldn't go, you probably shouldn't do that. No, you're going to go pull the kid out of traffic. Now, y'all see the movie The Incredibles? Y'all remember the first Incredibles movie? The second one was pretty incredible too. But anyway, the first Incredibles movie, y'all remember the heroes were all in trouble and they had to go into hiding. They had to stop using their powers. Why? You remember what Mr. Incredible did, the main character in the story? He saved a guy's life, but in the process of saving him, he broke some of the guy's bones. Y'all remember that? And so the guy was suing him and taking it as an opportunity to cash in against the heroes. And sometimes, guys, you will become the victim because in order to save someone, you had to hurt them a little bit. Does that make sense? And it's not a fun thing. Jesus didn't enjoy it, I'm sure. I know I don't enjoy it. But I tell you what, if one of y'all is doing something and I'm aware of it and it's hurting you and it's hurting your relationship with God, you just need to know that I'm going to say something. And I invite you to say something to me. And that's what the church is supposed to be about. A place where we're looking out for each other, not afraid to talk about it. This question is very important as well. Fill this in. Am I focused on being blessed or being like Christ? This is a question you need to ask yourself. Are you in this to get your bellies filled? That's what Jesus said about this crowd. He's like, y'all are just looking for me because you want another free ticket meal. You're not here because you understood what I did there. You didn't understand the miracle. You didn't understand the point of it. You're just here to get fed again. So are you in it for the blessing, or are you in it to become more like Christ? If you're in it to become more like Christ, you'll achieve the ultimate blessing. Because if you hear these preachers late at night on TV and they're like, hey, if you'll send in this money, God will multiply that. Now, what con artists? That's what they are. Con artists. Shameful. But they preach health and wealth and prosperity if you'll follow Jesus. You know what Jesus preached? Yeah, if you follow me, they're going to hate you like they hated me. Yeah, you might not have a place to lay your head. It's going to be rough at times. You might even die. The preachers on TV, oh, you're going to be blessed. Look at this jet I fly in. Look at my $1,000 shoes. These are not, by the way. These are clearance special. Anyway, just letting you know. I want you to ask the question as we get ready to take the Lord's Supper. We do this every week at Crossway. Feel free to participate if you want. Feel free to just sit there quietly as we take of this. But every week at Crossway, we take a second to remember, to basically ask ourselves questions and to remember the sacrifice of Jesus. The little piece of bread represents his body that was broken on the cross for us. The little cup of juice that we'll make available, it's grape juice. It represents his blood. Jesus instituted this meal. He said, every time you take of this, I want you to remember me. I want you to remember me. And so right now, as we remember Jesus and his love, his sacrifice on the cross, I want you to think about this question. Am I focused on my blessing, or am I focused on becoming more like Christ? Let's pray. God, thank you for the cross. Thank you for the sacrifice of Jesus, his willingness to go to the cross, his willingness to surrender his life. He did no crime. It was our crime, but he did the time. He paid the penalty for our sin. Though he was innocent and we were guilty, he was punished and we were not. Right now, God, as we think about your demonstration of love on that cross, I pray that we will remember and we will allow that love to motivate us to go out and love other people that way. Thank you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
This is my body given for you. This is the cup that holds the blood of a new covenant. This is forgiveness, simple and true. This is the way that I have made for you. Before you eat, before you drink, take a long look inside and tell me what you see. He said, do this in remembrance of me. Do this in remembrance of me. This is the bread of life broken for you.
This is the cup that holds the wine of a new covenant. This is the love of Christ poured out anew. This is the Son of God who died for you. Before you eat, before you drink, take a long look inside and tell me what you see. the way that I have made for you. I am the way. This is the way that I have made for you.
Amen. I hope that that was a meaningful time for you guys, just remembering the Lord. Let's wrap this sermon up. How about it? So, number 4, if you want to know how to trust Jesus when his teachings are hard, you need to acknowledge and embrace who Jesus is. Not who the culture says he is, not who some preacher says he is, but who does Jesus reveal himself to be? In John chapter 6, verses 68 through 69, it says, Simon Peter replied, Lord, to whom would we go? This is in response to Jesus saying, do you want to leave too? Peter speaks up as the leader. Normally, he was the first one to speak up, sometimes putting his foot in his mouth. But this time, he nails it. He says the right thing. He says, Lord, to whom would we go? You have the words that give eternal life. We believe and we know you are the Holy One of God. And the NIV says, we have no place to go. Where did the people go that left him, though? Where did they leave and leave Jesus to go? Did they just go home and drift back into wickedness? Well, maybe some perhaps did. However, in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3, this is not on your notes, but you might jot this reference down. It says, for the time will come when men will not put up with sound teaching. Instead, to suit their own desires, they'll gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. Guys, you heard of church shopping? There's advice shopping, and there's church shopping. And if you go to a church that meddles into your business too much, you can always cancel them and go to one that'll tell you all the nice things about yourself. And hopefully you get a balance of that. With Jesus, he would speak hope and life, but he would also challenge. And he wouldn't back down from the truth that you needed to hear, whether it was positive or negative, or whether you would like it or not. But understand that these people had places to go. They could go back to another rabbi that just stroked their ego and told them how wonderful they were. Right? That didn't challenge them. I bet you hear you say, I'm really struggling with this, and I did this, and I'm feeling really guilty about it. You've got the people that go, oh, honey, everybody does that. You've got those people, right? But I hope and I pray for you that you can find those people that are willing to get uncomfortable themselves and be willing to get in your face and go, bro, that's not cool. Sis, that's not cool. I hope you have people like that can challenge you. Husbands, we need husbands and our other husbands in our lives that can hear the way we talk to our spouse and go, bro, that wasn't cool. Ladies, you need other ladies in your life that can go, hey, that wasn't nice, and that wasn't becoming of a lady. Right? Hopefully you've got ladies in your life that could look, and I hope I'm not stereotyping too much, but hopefully you've got ladies in your life that could come up and go, sis, I think that's a little too short. Summer's coming where nobody wears anything. I hope you got somebody that's willing to look at you and go, hey, are you really helping the brothers out? I mean, in the right way? So embrace those kind of people that come and see them as precious. Number 4. Subpoint under, where am I at here? Yeah. Number 4, acknowledge and embrace who Jesus is. But the subpoint there that you need your blanks filled in before you have a panic attack is Jesus is the Lord of Lords. That's who he is. He's not just your homeboy. He's not just your buddy. He's Lord of Lords. In Romans chapter 14, verses 11 through 12, it says, for it is written, as I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue confess to God. So then, each of us will give an account of himself to God. Jesus, it is said of Jesus that every knee will bow in heaven and on earth at his name, at the name of Jesus. He is the Lord of lords, the King of kings. Fill in this blank. Jesus alone has the words that bring salvation. That's what he says in John 6, verse 40. It says, "For this is my Father's will and his purpose, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in and cleaves to and trusts in and relies on him should have eternal life." Boy, if you got a watered-down version of the word believe, you don't anymore. The Amplified Version gives you every word you could possibly put there for the Greek word. See, there's people that go, "Hey, do you believe in Jesus?" And they go, "Oh yeah, I believe in him." And what they mean is they believe in their head that he exists, or that he is who he said. They believe intellectually that he is who he said he was. Cool. But do you do anything with that? You see, if I asked you guys, do you believe in ghosts? Maybe some of your hands would go up and say, "I believe in ghosts." But if I changed the question and said, "Do you trust ghosts?" then suddenly you're like, "Well, no, I believe in them, but I don't think I'd take advice from them. That'd be a little risky." So I ask you, do you believe in Jesus? But if I change the question, do you trust him? That means, will you listen to what he says and do something with it? And that's the type of belief that brings salvation. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 24, it says, "The Lord our God commanded us to obey all the laws and to fear him. These laws are for our own good as long as we live, so that he will preserve our lives." It's still true today. He has law. He has things that need to be obeyed. And if you don't obey him, then all bets are off whether you're going to live a blessed life or a cursed life. Fill in this blank. Jesus is also the Holy One of God. In John 6, 61 through 62, it says, "Aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus said to them, 'Does this offend you?'" Remember that question? But listen to what Jesus said in verse 62. "Then what if you see the Son of Man ascend to where he was before?" See, he was on earth, regular old carpenter's son, so they thought. And he says, "What if you saw me lifted up where I came from?" See, he left heaven to come here in the form of a man. What if you saw him in his exalted state? If you read the book of Revelation, John, the one who wrote that down, it says he saw the exalted Jesus, and it was like blazing fire in his eyes, and his feet were like blazing bronze, and he had like a sword poking out of his mouth. He was powerful. And it says John, when he saw him, when he encountered him as he really was, it says John fell as though dead in his presence. He's not just our homeboy. He's the Lord of lords. And number 5, as we wrap up here, if we're going to trust him when his teaching is hard, we need to assess our faith and adjust accordingly. Have you ever had a faith assessment? Have you ever assessed your faith, like took an inventory to see where your faith was? Like how much do you really believe? Whatever the reason, this teaching, like no other teaching, challenged the disciples to personally evaluate their commitment to follow Christ. And that's what he wanted. With one teaching about eating his flesh and drinking his blood, Jesus separated the truly faithful from the ones who were just there to get fed. Some would say, by standards today, Jesus was a terrible preacher because he shrunk his congregation from 5,000 to 13 with one message. But what was he doing? He was telling them the truth, and he was sifting out those who were truly faithful from the ones who were just hanging around and pretending. In 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5, it says, "Examine yourselves to see whether you're in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not realize that Christ Jesus is in you? Unless, of course, you fail the test." See, the Apostle Paul says this to the folks that are in the church there in Corinth. He says, guys, examine yourselves. So I'm passing the word on. This is not my idea. But Paul is telling y'all this morning, examine yourself. See if you really got real faith. And if you don't, that's okay. Admit it. and say, it's hard. I want to, but how can I? But don't go the other way. Step closer. Ask questions. Bring your doubts up. Let's talk about it. In John 6:28-29, it says, Then they asked him, What must we do to do the works God requires? Jesus answered, The work of God is this, to believe in the one he sent. See, belief is not just an intellectual exercise. It's not just intellectually agreeing that something is true. It is working. It is doing. It is obeying. It's truly trusting him. James, the brother of Jesus, in his book, in chapter 2, verse 14 and verse 19, it says, My friends, what good is it to say you have faith when you don't do anything to show you really do have faith? Can this kind of faith save you? It's a rhetorical question, but his answer is clearly no, because he says, surely you believe there's only one God, and that's fine. Even demons believe this, and it makes them shake in fear. He says, look, demons encounter Jesus, and they believe he exists, and they believe he's powerful, but they're not surrendering to him and following him. They're still his enemies. And so, guys, this cheap, manufactured religious faith that's been created by churches all across our planet, you need to scrap it, you need to drop it like it's hot, and you need to adopt the true definition of biblical faith, which is action, obedience, submission, surrender, and ultimately dying to yourself so that Jesus can live through you. The last three, I'll leave you with this question. As you examine your faith, as you examine and assess your faith and adjust accordingly, I want you to ask, is my trust the kind of trust the crowds had? Like, I trust you as long as you're feeding me. I'll trust you as long as you're giving me a blessing. I'll trust you as long as you're telling me what I want to hear. Is your faith like that? Or is your trust kind of like the faith of Judas? You see, Judas was in this story the whole time. Jesus knew. Y'all realize Jesus already knew when he washed Judas's feet? He washed his feet. His old betraying feet. Washed them anyway. Is your faith like Judas? You're just kind of hanging around the others that are real serious? Like if you think if you hang out with the Peters of the world, that you'll somehow, Christianity will rub off on you? It's not how it works. Or is your faith and your trust kind of like the trust and faith of Peter, who says, where else would we go? You got the words of life. I'm with you. Whatever you say, that's what I'm doing. Even if it's hard, even if I can't make sense of it, even if nobody else goes, that's what I'm going to do. So I'll leave you with those questions, guys, and I want to pray for you. God, thank you for your words this morning. I pray that your Spirit will communicate the special message that you have for each person here this morning, and that you'll help them, Father, to open their minds and their hearts wide to what it is that you want for their lives. We love you. We thank you for Jesus, and we ask that the words that have been spoken from your word this morning will sink deep into our hearts and deep into our minds. And during this next song, God, I want to pray for everyone, guests and members alike, that during this next song, they will take out that little cardstock piece of paper in their bulletin. They'll fill it out and give you a chance. They can check boxes of ways that maybe we could serve them. They could write prayer requests. They can jot down commitments that they want to make that will encourage us. Father, we commit that we'll keep them private and that we won't harass people, but simply invite them to be a part of your family. We love you and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
In the calm of your presence, I am listening, Lord. I am still, I am quiet, I am yours. In the calm of your presence, I am listening, Lord. find. I long for the peace and life that I find in the calm of your presence. I am listening, Lord. I am still, I am quiet, I am yours. I am still, I am quiet, I am yours.
Amen.
All right. During the last song, the baskets will be passed as a reminder of what Maggie just said. For guests, please don't worry about putting any money in there. We're more concerned with giving to you than getting. And then for members, please continue to add your contribution of the baskets. If you will all stand with us, we'll sing one last song.
With his heart open wide from the depths, from the